just to kind of get like just so I can know what I'm kind of dealing with here. How many of you guys are like on a scale of 1 to 10, like how familiar are you with uh, web development? That includes like any sort of use of framework or uh, I guess like if you've used React or something like that. 1 to 10, how confident are you guys? You can put it in the chat. I want to kind of get a okay, gotcha. So kind of it's kind of good that you guys aren't that confident because I first started learning web development with React, and then learning Svelte after makes me really regret learning React because um, Svelte takes an intuitive approach to building web applications. So let's kind of go over what Svelte is exactly. Um, Let me share my screen here. 1 second, let me make sure we're all good here. Okay. Okay. You guys can see that. So this is the Svelte's website, and let me keep chat open here so I don't miss anything. That's the Svelte website. So what essentially Svelte is a web framework that like kind of allows you to compile. Um, well, I guess it kind of allows you to create web applications pretty easily. Obviously, there's a learning curve when it comes to using any sort of web framework. If you've watched not this video right here, I don't want to watch it, but like this video, Introduction to Front End Web Development, pretty much we go over how you build web applications, or I guess just front ends, strictly with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for some client side reactivity. So this is kind of like the building blocks. Anything beyond that, so like Svelte today is kind of going to be like an extension. Obviously, you don't need to know how any of like intro to front end works because Svelte kind of takes, like I said, it takes an intuitive approach to building kind of these to kind of building websites, and hopefully I'm going to be able to show you how that is exactly. So let me just kind of go over what I have written, or I don't know if written, but so Svelte is a framework for building fast, flexible, and cybernetically enhanced web applications. It's also known as the most loved JavaScript framework and the most satisfied with developers. It has a very big uh, GitHub contribution, or I guess community. It's very much liked, and let's kind of go over what is Svelte, or like kind of how it works. So if we go to svelte.dev, this website that I sent, I'm we're not gonna go over like setting up a Svelte project maybe at the end or something. But this is essentially Svelte right here. Simply like you have your Svelte file, and then here's your output. So this is, let me turn off. This is off. Okay, yeah. Wait, no, that was already off. Yeah, so this is Svelte. Um, just to kind of, you can see hello world is pretty simple. Sorry, I haven't really, let me collect, I gotta open my notes here. I wanted to see how I wanted to structure this. Okay, I have some more background that I want to go through, and I didn't really write it down, but essentially this, when we run this file here, when this file gets transpiled, um it doesn't actually get transpiled. It's actually a compiler, which means it's faster. It's far more efficient than something like React. This is kind of a React web app. If you don't know React, that's totally fine. I'm going to be comparing this to React because this is kind of like the industry norm when it comes to building web applications. You don't have to know any of this. We have done React workshops in the past. If you care to check that out, um, I think this video is very thorough when it comes to like all the nuances to React. So I already sent this in the chat, I think, but yeah. But I will be comparing it to React just because I think it's important to see what the industry is currently and what at least I'm hoping the industry moves forward, because this is a lot easier. And I know I'm again, you're going to see that in the comparisons. So yeah, this requires no virtual DOM. I'm not going to get into that, or I'm going to try to keep this simple, but essentially just faster. It's a lot faster building. It's a lot faster to execute. A lot less boilerplate code is needed. Like this, you need an export default function app. It's kind of redundant. Here we just have a component. Here's your HTML and here's your JavaScript. Boom, right there, all in the same scope. It's really nice. It's pretty easy to learn. We're gonna kind of go over some of the syntaxes. So that's some of the pros. Some of the cons is that it's relatively new. I think version 1, or I think it just got out of beta. At least Svelte Kit did, which is like its meta framework. This is for like building full stack web applications. It's kind of like React is to Next as Svelte is to Svelte Kit. Next.js is the full stack framework for React. Again, React is this industry norm. And again, I'm not gonna try to like bore you guys with this, or confuse you further. But yeah, so that's some of the cons. Is that it's relatively new, so there are some bugs. They're, if they're bugs, they're very like technical. Like we're probably not gonna experience anything wrong because it's pretty stable. Um, yeah, and then just to kind of contrast this with React is the most popular and widely used web framework. Um, Really easy to make UIs, or at least it's very organized, easy to understand if you've used React for a while. Um, and it was developed by Facebook back in 2013. And then this syntax that you see right here, you have like JavaScript, and then you return some HTML. That's called JSX. That's kind of why these files are called that. Um, Again, I'm not going to make this about React, but I'm going to be comparing it to React a lot. And one of the drawbacks of React is that it kind of has a big learning curve. Like the syntax is pretty weird if you're like a JavaScript developer, or if you're just, inexperienced in general. This looks kind of weird. Like, what are we doing exactly? So it's hard to pick up sometimes. When it comes to performance, so all this stuff is run and created inside of a virtual DOM. So it's kind of this React DOM, um, and it renders inside pretty much a virtual environment, kind of, not really virtual web page. Let's call it that. With Svelte, it's compiled. It's a lot faster, and you kind of get you can actually see the output of what this is. This is kind of like what gets compiled. If CSS too, you could also see that. And then this is the abstract tree. I think that's what AST is. You could see that all rendered out. So it is a lot faster, and it has less overhead when it comes to like building. Because React, you have to build out all the dependencies. They're very bulky. I'm reading right here that Svelte is only 1.7 kilobytes after it's gzipped. So and then React is around 45 kilobytes. That's both React and React DOM, which makes it 22 times lighter than React in terms of digital storage. So you can obviously see that this is like a lot less bulky, or it's less bulky when it comes to developing and building these applications. Yeah, so let's kind of go. Does anyone have any questions? We're gonna kind of get started on the syntax and try to learn. Again, it's svelte.dev. You can scroll down here. This is kind of where we're gonna be playing around with Svelte. You can kind of do it in this website. Um, that's how we're gonna be doing this. If any questions, feel free to open up the chat or just unmute. I think I should be able to hear stuff. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is Hello World in Svelte. You can kind of see it's similar to JSX in the sense that if you want to render out a variable, you have to put these curly braces and then your JavaScript expression inside. So this could be Hello World, just like that. Like this is just raw HTML. Raw HTML works perfectly with Svelte, obviously. kind of why it's so great. It makes sense. If you want to include, any sort of JavaScript, you can't just start typing in JavaScript. T is equal to 1. You have to put it inside of a script tag, just like traditional JavaScript DOM. Like if we look in, let's say a DOM environment. I don't hear my voice. Let's find something. Like, yeah, you can see, like, when you want JavaScript code, when you want some sort of reactivity, dynamic behavior inside of your application, you have that script tag, and then inside the script tag, you can kind of see here's your JavaScript. Are we comfortable with HTML? I don't really care too much for CSS and maybe JavaScript. HTML and JavaScript, scale of 1 to 10. I'm just curious. Let's see how good are we on with HTML. 1 to 10. 10 being super confident. 1 being what is HTML. Okay. All right. Yeah, that sounds good. And then just curious, because I don't want to do any crazy stuff with JavaScript if we don't know JavaScript too well. How good are we with JavaScript 1 to 10? Okay. Yeah. Sorry. So I'm gonna calibrate. So JavaScript, I'll try to explain the syntax, because there are some difference. There are some nuances in Svelte that make it seem a little weird, especially if you don't know JavaScript. But I'm gonna try my best to explain it. So I'll do kind of a quick little JavaScript tutorial here, a little blurb. So if you want to declare a variable, you have let or const if you want the value to be read only. So that means if you want to redefine the value, t is equal to 2. This isn't going to work because this is a constant value, which means it's read only. If you want to be able to, reassign it, you do let t. That makes it mutable, or I don't know, not mutable, but reassignable. Actually, I think also mutable. Lets you reassign it, and there's your value 2. There's different data types. So if we want t to be equal to, let's say, like the string hello world, you just put 2 quotes here, just like other languages, and get hello world. You could have let a is equal to, like, you can append strings. So let's say you want to have like the hello world string plus put my name here. Then a is equal to hello world appended with Zavar. So if we wanted to actually print that out, let's get rid of that and put a p tag, which is paragraph. Essentially, that's just what like normal text looks like. And then you have like your h1, which is like this is a heading. And then the p tag, this is a paragraph, just like that. That's kind of some basic HTML. What is let? Let is what's it called? Let's just kind of like I don't know the proper term for it. I think it's like a identifier. All it is pretty much setting the scope of this variable to this entire script tag. Like if you were to do just t, like if you're familiar with Python, you do like t is equal to I don't know, I can't. I'm a little confused, but you could do global.t. If this was Node.js, this isn't Node.js. You have to put like let or const in front of it, unless you're in Node.js where you could use like global or window. Wonder if window lets you do it. Yeah, so you have to do some sort of like let t or like let or const, pretty much, if that makes sense. Const makes it read only. Let makes it just like let that thing equal, something like that. This just makes it like less beautiful. There's var. You're not supposed to use var, from what I hear, because it screws with the scoping. There's kind of 2 extremes that you want to stay in front of. It's const for like read only, and then if you want just like local variables, you want to use, it's the wrong order. You want to use let, and then if you want global variables, You could do global dot var name, just kind of do it like that. If you're a Node.js, Node.js is essentially like running JavaScript in the console environment. And then if you're on like, since we're on Chrome, since we're on like a web browser, it's not running Node.js. It's just running vanilla J, or there's a proper thing for it. I don't know what it's actually running. It's like running JavaScript, DOM JavaScript. You do window.var name. This is for local. You don't need to know these. You just need to know const and let. And then JavaScript developers, everyone who I know always say to never use this. Not a good practice. But yeah, this is kind of like the, I think they're called identifiers, but it's essentially how you declare a variable. So let's say we want to render out the variable a. What you would do is like if you put an a here, it's just going to render it out as raw text. What I want to do is I want to render out the dynamic, the variable value. So I would just put curly braces around it, and boom, there it goes. You can see that variable change magically. If I want to change this to be like var comma hey guys, you can see that it changes. If let's say we want to print out the value of t, which is just hello world, you just replace that variable name with t, and there you go. That's kind of really basic, I guess, dynamic rendering of some sorts. Yeah. Any questions so far? What is P used for? Yeah, so P is in HTML. Let me actually search up list of HTML tags. So you can kind of, I'm going to send this in the chat if you're curious. You want to know what all of these things are. So essentially, if you control F-P, you can kind of see all that does is it defines a paragraph. So like I said, paragraph is smaller text right here. H1, H2, H3, H2 are headings. So if we want to make like a smaller heading, like let's do H2, this is a smaller heading. And then we want to do H3, this is an even smaller heading. Like that, you can kind of see as it descends like that. There's a couple other things too, like div. These don't really serve a functional purpose. It's more like you can do scoped styling, and it creates. I don't know that. Let's actually see. I think it stands for division, but you can pretty much nest certain or different items in it. Yeah, it's essentially just a section in a document. You see this everywhere. If I were to right click and inspect element on this website, you're going to find a lot of different things. So these are TR, which is like a table table row, and then TD is a table, forgot what it's called. Yeah, you have your table body, but that's table stuff. You can see divs are pretty much how this entire website is built. If you wanted to create a tab on a website, I mean, it depends on the styling. I would say P is more for like text content. If you wanted to create like a tab, you could do something like, and let's actually just get into that. So let's say we want to make this div right here, like a tab. You can have nested static. So let's first create. I'm going to create a new component here. I'm going to call it like, let's call it tab.svelte. So this is how you create a new file. And so in tab.svelte, let's say I want to create like a div that has like a tab. So we'll just say like tab content. We'll make it dynamic later. And then let's say we want to style that div. Just like in normal HTML, CSS, you could just have your style tags and have your div. So for those who aren't familiar with CSS, the syntax isn't too bad. It's a little just trivial. There is like a format to follow. I think we go over it in here. I wonder if I have that like slide or that picture that shows it. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if I can. I don't know, find it like this, but there's a certain way you can like a certain format. But essentially, it's like you have your selector. So div is my selector. I want to style everything related to divs because I want to style this. We want to create like a tab. We want the content to be padded outwards or padded inwards to make it look thicker. So we can add a styling of padding. Let's make it around 10 pixels. Let's say we want it to have like a background color so we can actually see it taking up that space. I hate that it doesn't do tab. Let me actually make this style a lot better. Got background color. Let's do like FFF or I'm just gonna search up color picker and pick like a color that's kind of dark so contrasts fine. I'm just gonna copy that. That's just a hash, and we're gonna put that hash right here. And you can see it doesn't show up, right? Like we have to like figure out a way to import this tab file, tab.svelte. So to import anything from a, let's call this div. Let's say we want to import this tab file. We would do import tab from dot slash. So dot slash refers to like the current directory. We want to do it from dot slash tab dot svelte. You can see it still hasn't shown up. Now this is essentially like an imported component. So what we can do is just put tab right there and self close it. And you can see that like there's my tab. It kind of fills up the entire div. But essentially like now that's kind of like this is what a component is. In React, if you wanted to create like, if you wanted to do like the same thing, you'd have like a function tab. You want to return the same thing we just did. Say like tab content. And then for us to have like inline styles, we'd have to use like this. We'd have to do it like a DOM styling, which would be like padding 25, 25. If it's an integer, it's just going to default think it's like the pixel value. And then what else do we do in here? We did a background color of that. So background color, there's no hyphen here because this is JSON. I'm not trying to confuse you guys, I promise. I just want to show that it sucks doing it in React and I hate it. But if we do like tab, you can see that like that same kind of content is right there. I think this website has like some styling on it already, kind of like what you just saw, but that's kind of how you do it in React. Thing is, this is already kind of messy because this isn't in its own file. If you want to create like your own file, you do like new file. It's called this tab.jsx. Open that up, and this needs to be exported. And then I'm going to go ahead and import it into my app by doing import. I think it's tab from /tab.tsx. Just do that tab, and there's the same thing. It's kind of similar. You're going to see as we kind of scale up, it's going to be a lot different. Sorry, I wasn't looking at chat. So it's designed for styling. What if you want to create it? Oh, yeah, just did that. How would you space things to the left or right? It depends. If you want to space like text, let's say I want to change like the content, or let's say instead of this being left, I want this to be right. There's a CSS attribute. Let's look for CSS attribute. So there's a thing called, this is that website I'm on, text center. No, sorry, I'm text align. Yeah. And then here you could actually align your text based on whatever. So if I wanted to do it on like the right side of my page, I would just type that in here. and you can see that goes on the right. If I want to do it on the center, boom, just like that. And the thing is with these reusable components is now you can, essentially reuse them, right? Like you can put stuff as many times as you want. You don't have to keep on writing code. So it's kind of like a function. It's kind of its purpose. Let's see. So you can actually do images as well. I should have prepared better for this. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna go to my GitHub and find something real quick. I apologize. Are there any more questions while I look for this one thing? Shoot away. Okay. Okay. I just kind of wanted to find this. You could do images as well. So I'm gonna look up. Let's look up an image. Is there like an image on Google? Let's just use this basic image. I'm gonna copy the image address to this just to show how images work on in Svelte. So, and I also forgot to say. So you see how this div doesn't have any of the styles of this div, even though we pretty much told for every div, give it padding of 10 pixels, give it a background color of that dark green, and make the text align center. That only applies to everything inside of this Svelte file, everything inside of this component. Um, it doesn't get applied to anything outside of it or components. It does apply to components within it, nested as well, but it's more scoped. So you don't have to do the crap that we had to do with styled components with React, which is just awful. It was an awful experiment where we had to like write out like the CSS attributes in line, or not in line, but like essentially in a string with no formatting. This is awful. So this is kind of like a remedy to it, while also getting to pervert or to um, contain or preserve the CSS syntax, which is really nice. But yeah, like I was saying, let's say we wanted to import that image. Obviously, if you want to do an image, it's an img tag, and we do href. I think is it href? I think it's src. Sorry, it's been a long day. We want to self-close that. That's what this is, by the way. I don't know if I explained that. Some things have an opening and a closing, just like that. This things that don't have children, which is anything between an open and a close tag. That means it has no children. That means it can just self-close. That's what that means. So I want to make src equal to the image URL of that website. This looks awful. You can see the images here. Let's say I want to create like a style. We'll put this on the bottom. I think that's the convention. So style. I want to format images so that their like width is 50 pixels and their height is 50 pixels as well. So you can see that's a lot smaller. That looks a lot nicer. You're also supposed to have alt attributes. So say alt, like in case the image doesn't load, it'll show this up. Or if you're like blind, I think in some accessibility options, if you click on an image and you're blind, it'll read out the alt text if you're on like a device that has read aloud. So I'll say like color wheel, and let's say this website goes down or something, you could see that like if the image doesn't load, it pretty much has like those things. But this isn't new. If you've used HTML, like this is like, pretty obvious. What's new is, or I guess how we would make this kind of dynamic is we like we could do like const my image is equal to that, and then we can do src, so we can set the image attribute to be equal to the dynamic value of my image. So remember, everything in between the curly braces is a JavaScript expression. So we're essentially setting the src value, the source image, equal to this variable. That's kind of how that works. And you could do the same thing with the alt if you wanted to. Any questions on that? We're going to move into reactivity, kind of the more conceptually interesting part. Just feel free to interrupt. I'm gonna clear this out. Okay. So let's say we want to create like a counter. Like everything we've done so far is we're just clicking. We're not even clicking anything. We're just looking at like static content. So let's say we want to have like a button that does something. Let's do some very basic reactivity stuff. So a button in HTML is essentially like written as so, and then you have like your text content. I'll say go, and there's a button. Click it, does nothing, right? So how do we assign like a certain functionality to this button? Let's first open up a script tag where we can actually write JavaScript code. Um, and let's make it so that every time we press go, it'll increment a number. So let's have a variable called count is equal to 0. We're going to make a counter. So, and let's say we want to also print out the number. So I'm going to have like a h1 tag that says clicked times clicked, and then remember to render out any sort of variables from the JavaScript. You would just put it curly braces and then the count, or like, and then the variable that you want right there. So right now, obviously, it does nothing. We want this to, excuse me. We want this button to actually increment the number. So to do that, I'm gonna create a function called like function increment. This is how we make functions in JavaScript. You can also use like the anonymous function way, which is like const increment. You might see me write stuff like this as well. So that these work as well, but I'll keep it simple. We want this to pretty much increment up once, so I'm going to do count plus plus, and then on the button I want to create a new attribute, do on click, on colon click. So this is essentially just saying whenever the person clicks on this button, we're going to run a function. So I'm going to bind the function, which is that thing that we just declared right here, increment. And now you should be able to see when I click go, that number goes up. So I'm going to create this, I'm going to make this plus, and I'm going to do the same thing for minus. We don't have to create a separate function for it. You can do like I minus minus, or not, sorry, count minus minus. This looks a little weird if you're not familiar. Sorry. Let's just do it. Let's have another function, decrement, and we'll do count minus minus, which is essentially this is essentially the same thing as, if you're not familiar with JavaScript, it's the same thing as doing count is equal to count plus 1. Then this is the same thing as doing count is equal to count minus 1. So it's just incrementing or decrementing it down. And then we can bind the function here, so that when we press minus, it'll go down 1. We press up. If we wanted to make it go, like 2 times, we could do something like change this factor. And you can see that it'll go up twice now. If we want to make this to go -5 each time, you can see that it does like that. That's kind of the gist of that. Yes. Any questions about that in particular? Like, does this make sense? Is this kind of like, oh, okay. Does this part make sense where we're like on click setting it to a function? Before we're setting this to like a variable, right? Like we're pretty much just rendering out the variable. Here we're binding a JavaScript function so that when this gets clicked, the code inside of here gets run. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, so let's use reactive values. So this is kind of, if you're familiar with JavaScript, this might feel a little weird, but this is totally valid JavaScript. And for those who are familiar with jQuery, they might have some flashbacks. But let's say we want to calculate this count value every time it's changed, and have a separate value for, let's say, if it's like doubled. So to do that, I want to say, like, I want to create a p tag and say like doubled is what I could do is, like, if I want to render out the value of the count times 2, I could just do count times 2, right? And what that would do is, if it's 7, it'll be 14, just like that. But see, this value here is only limited to like the HTML. Let's say I want to like use this number, this double value, elsewhere. Let's say I wanted to put it inside of a different component, or I want to do some more calculations with it. You can't do any calculation. Like, the calculation is done when it's rendered, right? So that's not very helpful. So if we want to track changes in real time to variables, we can use the $ expression, colon. So this is essentially like a label. I think Java has like labels. It's essentially like the same thing. Is there like an image? Yeah, so like if you have like nested while loops, you might have used this before. This is like a Java example. I think JavaScript has it too. I don't know why I searched up, but yeah, like essentially, like if you have nested logic and you want to break out to a certain part of the code, you can declare like some sort of value, colon, and then your block of code beneath it. Here, Svelte reserves the $ keyword, or as a keyword, so that when we do $, some expression, it'll run. So let's say I want to have a variable, let's call it doubled, is it's equal to count times 2, right? So what we do is, like, this is the same thing, but let's say we want to actually use the value of doubled right here. I'm sorry, that's the wrong thing. We can use the value of doubled now, and it looks exactly like the same. It's like we didn't do anything, but now this value is being rendered in here. It's not being rendered over here, which means that I could do more stuff with this later on if I wanted to. And you don't have to actually do like the let doubled, I think. Yeah, I mean, you can. I think it's good to do that. But here's like the nice thing. If you're a React or Vue person, lifecycle management, which is like a fancy term for essentially like, how do we manage the state of a component or a state of like this entire file, you'll realize like this is game changing. Let's say I write the same exact thing in React. Let me actually do that real quick. How do we do this? Okay, so let's say I have like so state management in React sucks. So you have to do like const, let's call this count, and then set count to React use state. Again, you don't have to follow along. I'm just showing you how much more annoying it is using industry norms or for like the past decade. So let's say I want to render out the same thing, like count, render out count right there. And then I want to have a button. Click it. I'm just going to write this really quickly so we don't have to focus on it too much. Set count. It's going to be plus. And I want the same thing for minus. Minus. This wrong. Okay, yeah. So essentially, this is how you'd write it in React. It's a lot more bulky. It's bulkier. You have to do, I mean, it's kind of the same thing right now, but you'll see kind of if I were to do the same thing, is like this syntax. So if let's say I wanted to track changes for this count variable. So whenever this count variable changes, I want to recalculate it and have a separate value called doubled. So let's do that same thing in React. Let's do doubled and then set doubled React.use state, and this will be based on count. We're gonna make it set it to 0 for just by default, and then we have to track the changes. So React.use effect. Again, I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm just trying to tell you that this sucks. I hate doing this in React. And then every time count changes, what we do is we'd set doubled to the value of count times 2. And then let's print out the value of doubled. Up there. And you can see just like that, we have so much more code. This is literally just one line. Boom, you have your variable. Just it tracks changes. So this essentially $, anything after, it just runs. It knows what value is changing. It knows what's required inside of this $, to rerun it. Here we have to manually tell it, okay, every time count is changed, then you can recalculate the value of doubled. It's annoying. It sucks. There actually is a better way to do this with use memo. Actually, let me make sure. Use memo. So this pretty much just like recalculates the function when it changes. So you could actually do like count times 2 and then change it when count changes. Okay, I guess I just kind of devil's advocated myself. Whatever, this still sucks. This is like ugly. This probably makes no sense. This, on the other hand, makes a little more sense, I would say. At least visually, it looks more appealing. Yes, any questions about that? Because with this $, thing, we can, because we can track changes, we can have stuff like, let's say we have like if, I'm going to get rid of this doubled stuff. Let's say if count is greater than or equal to 5, we can send out an alert saying you're too high. And then let's reset the value. So I'll create like another function here. Function reset. What website should we use to learn web development? HTML. It's a good question. I would say if you want to just learn HTML, there's probably a YouTube video or two out there that go over like the basics. Essentially like the structure, like you have your tags. Pretty much HTML is, I would say, kind of trivial when it comes to, you just have to like know what each of these tags do. That could just be like reading this, spending like a good amount of time reading. Oh, what's a div do? What do details do? There's only like a handful of these that actually you would probably use when learning web development. But yeah, I mean, I would say that I learned HTML while also learning, everything else. It's not really like a programming language. It's more of just like a markup. Excuse me. A drink of water. Any other questions? All right. Okay. Yeah, so let me create this reset function that'll just set the count equal to 0. So let's say when we're too high, we want to set this count equal to 0. So now I can just call reset when the value is greater than or equal to 5. So when it's 5, it'll give, like, the website will alert me saying I'm too high, and it'll reset the value back down, just like that. And so this code right here runs every time count is changed. Do the same thing in JavaScript, right? You'd have to do that awful thing where you check if count is greater than or equal to 5, and alert resetting. We'll do like set count 0. And you do the same thing here. You have to like manually write out like a use effect hook that'll just track changes. Here it's just kind of like there's a $sign. It's already implied that count is going to be the thing that's going to be tracked. You don't have to worry about it. And so this runs every time count. Like this expression gets run every time count is changed because it knows like magically that, hey, that value is being tracked, or like it knows which value to be tracked. Yeah, so let's move on to components. So we kind of got a taste of that with this right here. But kind of, does anyone have any more questions about this? I can copy that. This should be good. When it comes to, I'm gonna delete this, okay? If you guys want it, it's in my clipboard, just let me know. Yeah, so let's kind of go over and start talking about we have to import it, components. So I'll start from scratch here. So let's say we want to create a component. I'm going to create a component called, let's call this like welcome. This will be like a welcome message. So inside of here, I want to have a div with an h1, h2 tag. Let's make it a little smaller. Say welcome, and then I want it to have like some sort of user, but like to have variables, right? We want to use a script tag, and then let's have let user equal to, or let's call it like name, and then this will be like the person's name. So by default, let's just make it user. Essentially, eventually we'll like redefine it, but for now we're just gonna render out welcome name and import it into here. So we do import welcome. I can zoom this in more too. Welcome from dot slash. We want to refer to the welcome .svelte file that we just made, and then we want to actually call it or render it out, I guess. So you can see welcome users right there. I'm gonna add a period or exclamation point right here. But you know, this is boring. Let's say I want to be able to like, you know, like from here, have like a property that can redefine this variable user, so I don't have to change it each time here, and so that doesn't change it everywhere. So to do that, what we can do is put an export right here, and what that does is have like our default value user, but export pretty much makes it available to be changed from the parent. So this app file is the parent. This is like the child because it's being called above it. So now I can have an attribute in here because we call this attribute name. We can essentially, can I move this? No. We could essentially just have an attribute called name and redefine it to whatever we want to call it. So I'm going to put my name here. You can see that the default value is user, but if the name attribute is defined, it'll just override this value and print it out. Does that kind of make sense? Like if it's really nice because now I can not have to worry about like, or I can have like reusable code. Let's say like guy, and then like that's the default one. And in here, like we could be fancy with it too. Sorry, that's the script. Let's say we want to make this look a little nicer. We select div. Again, I want to give it some padding. We'll give it like a 20 pixel padding. Give it a background color. Background color of, let's make it red. And what else should we add here? I don't know why that's not changing. Div padding. Oh, it's not supposed to be in a quote. Yeah, so that looks awful because it's just the entire page is full of them. But I assume if I got rid of it, it would look a little better. Maybe we want to add some spacing in between both of these elements. To do that, we would do margin. We can do margin bottom, and so that'll add like a like some like a space between it. We'll do like 5 pixels. We'll do 10 pixels. So it kind of looks a little better. And then let's say I want to center it. We do text align, center, boom, just like that. Make sure you put semicolons at the end, and kind of get something that looks a little nicer. And again, you could make these all dynamic, or I guess you can have like another attribute here. So let's do like export let welcome message, and then let's not give it a default value. I'm just going to keep that the same, and then let's make like a welcome message and render it here if it exists. So it by default it's going to be undefined because we didn't define anything. So a way to get rid of that is to just put an or here. That's what the 2 pipes are. If you don't know where pipe is on your keyboard, it's your backspace, like the key right under it, but you have to like press shift. That's what that is. And then put like an empty quote so it doesn't actually render it out. So if this value exists, it's going to render it out, or that's what this is, or it'll just render out this value. That's what that is. We'll go over conditional rendering in a second. And then now if we want to put that welcome message, we could do welcome message is equal to welcome to the site. So now you can kind of see it comes together just like that. Not going to go over spread props. So let's go over conditional rendering. So to do, like, let's say, okay, I'm going to delete this. And we're going to start over again. So I'm going to use their example for this. So let's say we have a variable here called let login logged in equals to false. So let's say we're creating like a website for like logging in or just managing like some sort of login session. So let's create first, before we do that, we have a variable called logged in. This is going to be like the central point of what we're doing here. So let's render out, like, so let me write this out. Is there comments? I don't know how you actually do comments in Svelte. I think it's something like this. I have no idea how you do. Oh, it's just like HTML. So yeah, so this is a comment in HTML, I think. Yeah. Okay. And then in JavaScript, it's just two slashes. HTML. So I want to make it so that if logged in is true, then render out a log out button, because if they're logged in, we don't need them to log in again. We're just going to give them the option to log out. And then if it's false, then we'll render out a login button to tell the user, hey, let's log in again. So let's create those buttons first. So I'm going to do button, and we'll call this login, and we'll have another button called log out. Both of these buttons do something different, right? So this button is going to log in, this button is going to log out. So let's have, let's keep this, we'll do function login. That's equal to, so how are we going to essentially change this value? Or like if we want to log in, we'll just do logged, we'll set logged in equals to true. The same thing for log out. But instead of for logging out, we want to obviously make it so that it's false, because they're not logged in anymore. And so let's also bind that functionality. So on click, we want this to be login, that functionality to be login, and then whenever we click the log out button, we will run the log out function just like so. And then let's have a heading that says, okay, or sorry, I was going to do the same thing. Let's say logged in, and then we'll just put out like the Boolean just like that. So right now, logged in is false. I'm gonna click login. That's true. That's false. But like, let's say if we're logged in, we shouldn't have both the attributes to just switch, in and out like this. So let's put an if condition to make sure this is logged in. So in React, what you could do if you're awful is you could do, well, I mean, this is actually just basic JSX syntax, which is awful. It's not very readable. I don't. Can you do this? No, you can't even do that. Never mind. Don't ignore what I'm doing. I'm a React brain. So an if condition, if we want to do conditional rendering, so rendering this button if if logged in is true, what we do is we like. Okay, so we're false right now. This is only going to render. So we're logging in. That means if we're logging in, we want to log out. So we have to kind of do this inverted logic. So to do an if condition, we do hash if, and then we do logged in. So if logged in is true, which is kind of what this is the same thing as like this. So if logged in is true, then we want them to be able to log out. And then to end the if statement, we do /if, just like that. Now we want to be able to do the same thing with the login button. So if we're not logged in, that's what this does, putting and negating. That's what that is. Then we'll be able to log in. So if logged in, you have to log out. If you're not logged in, then you have to log in. That's kind of the options we're giving the people. So you can see that now this button and this button is rendered conditionally based on this if statement. You could also just do else and then move this here, get rid of that. And this does the same exact thing. Obviously, that's probably your better choice when it comes to like picking. But I was just showing for the sake of how if statements work. You could do two if statements. So these buttons are completely different. If I were to say hi in this button and this button doesn't say hi, you can see it's a totally different DOM element. It's a whole different element than if you were to like conditionally render it based on like the status, if I were to put it in here instead. So that's kind of if statements. That's how you do an else statement. You put a colon and then else, just like that. You could have else ifs as well. So if I were to do like, I want to bring back the, let's see. Bring back that entire thing that I just wrote. No. It's like not copy. There it is. Okay. So we're back on this one. Yeah. So let's do some if statements in here. Yeah. Oh, I see we're kind of running low on time. Here, I'll try to. Here's what I can do. Okay, we're gonna try to wrap this up here. So the big other thing is bindings. So let's say you want to be able to input. I guess we don't really need all this. We'll just get rid of it again. Let's close this up. So let's say we have like an input here. It's like a text input, and this has a value or a placeholder. I hate that it doesn't autocomplete. And this has a value of like enter your BMI. I love using the BMI calculator. We did the same thing in our React workshop where we created a BMI calculator in React. I'm going to try to make one really quickly and then let you guys go. But yeah, so let's create a BMI calculator. I guess I don't even remember how you make one. So let's see what we need. We need a weight, weight in pounds, height. Okay, you just need weight and height. So let's have weight and so like in pounds. Let's have another input for height. How did I do this? Height in feet, height in inches. Okay, because it's like 5'6" or whatever. So height, feet, and inches, just like that. And then I want this to be like in a separate line, so I'll do a break here. There's probably a better way to do that. But anyways, so this is kind of like the basis of our BMI calculator. So the BMI formula is, yeah, I want to use imperial. So it's your weight in pounds over your height in inches times 703. So let's use that. So first, let's find a way to actually get these values. So it's really nice in Svelte. All you have to do is have a variable. So let's have weight. And these should be number values. So right now they're just text values. If I can type text in it, what we can do is we can change the type, and this should be of number. So now if you can hear me clicking on my keyboard, it's not working unless I put some sort of integer value. So I'm going to do that for all three, but you can use texts as well, just like so. So now these are all numbers. So I'm going to create three variables. I'm going to do this quickly. So let weight, I'm going to spell it, weight is equal to, let's just let weight. What we want to do is we want to bind the value of weight into this input. So it's really easy. You just do bind :value into the value that you want. So just like that. Now this value, if I were to do like console.log weight, every time weight changes, you'll see that it shows up in my console whenever the value changes, just like that. So now this value is pretty much connected to this input. Let's do the same for the other two. So let height feet and let height inches, and do the same thing for these two. Oops. Change them accordingly. So now those values are kind of connected. Yeah, so now that we have these values, let's add like a go button to calculate it. Actually, we don't even need to do that because it's all reactive. Whatever, we can if we want to. So we want to have a variable BMI equal to our values, just like so. What was it? It was 703 times your weight in pounds and height squared in inches. Okay, so let's kind of you can make these scoped as well. So I'm gonna just kind of put this logic in here. So let's let BMI equal to, or let's see how we want to do this. So it's, let me put a comment here saying BMI is equal to 703 times weight. Let's just call it pounds over inches squared. Is there okay, so this is like a factor or a ratio, so it's like that. Okay, so it shouldn't be too hard. So essentially we can set BMI equal to literally that, 703. So how do we get the weight? Well, we have weight defined, so that's weight just like that, divided by our inches squared. So because we have feet and inches, the way I'm kind of writing this, in case you're like a little confused, is I'm just having it so that a user can type in like 5'8", for instance. So 5 feet, and because this is in inches, we have to convert the feet into inches. So that's like height feet times, there's 12 inches in a foot. I'm gonna make sure I'm parenthesing these right. And then plus the extra height that we have in inches. And then we square this. I think that's how you, can you square? I don't know. BMI. Okay, and then let's render out our BMI value. Say like H1, and then let's say like BMI is BMI. So BMI is right now not a number. That's what nan is. Let's put my BMI here. So I am, what am I? I'm like 161, and I am around 5'7". That is not right. Let's see. It's weight in pounds. 703 height in square inches. Did I screw this up? Oh, it's height. Wait. I'm like so out of it right now. 703. That's not 0.8. Let's console log all these. If this is true, I would be dead right now. I don't think you could be 0.3 BMI. Inches. So 160. So you can see these values kind of print out as you type them. So I'm 5'7". Oh, so I forgot to add. Wait. I see. I had a typo here. There we go. That should work now. I think it was probably converting one of those to like a string. So 5'7" or 5'8". I don't remember which one. But you can see that I am probably a little overweight. It's bulking season. You can't be too mad at me. But yeah, that's the BMI. Let's say I want to like, I think to round it off, you could do like math.round. I'll do 161. I'll get rid of this console log. 161, 5'7", 25. There you go. It's rounded now. Just like that. Now I want to show you something real quick. Okay, let's go to our GitHub here. We did the same exact thing with our React workshop back in November of, when was this? When did I do this? This is 2 years ago. Wow. Okay. We did a BMI calculator, and here's the code for that. Okay. It was, to be fair, it was a little more complicated, but the code for it sucks because what we're doing, I'll try to kind of explain it. So we have our weight input, our height in feet, height in inches. We have to use ref. So what useref is essentially that binding that is really seamless in Svelte. Let me close this. I keep clicking on it. That's what this binding is, but in React. But with this, it binds to its raw DOM element. So whenever we like calculate the BMI, we have to take in its current value like this, because this is you're binding it to the actual DOM element, and then you have to make sure everything's there for that to like calculate it. And then once that's all done, then we could set the header, or that setting header is essentially just setting the BMI or displaying the BMI result. But it is a lot more verbose. Here it's just a couple lines of code, literally 17 lines of code, all done like that. You can see that's awesome. I love this so much. Let's do one more thing. Let's do some conditional rendering. So what I did in this was I made it so that essentially like the BMI, I don't know if, for those of you who don't know BMI, I probably should have explained. BMI is just like your body mass index. So if your BMI is less than 18.5, you're underweight. If your BMI is 18.5 to less than 25, you're pretty good. Your BMI is 25 to 30, then you're overweight. And if it's over 30, you are obese. So let's kind of have that conditional logic. So let's make it render out something neat, or like a message. So let's go over and excuse me. Let's have like a value. let's first handle this so it doesn't show your BMI if like the value isn't like valid. So to do that, you can do like BMI, or you can do like if is not a number. So it's not a number. This is weird. Trust me, this is like a JavaScript thing. It sucks. That should work. 165 or whatever. I don't remember my weight. It's like 161 or 165. I'm pretty in between. 5, 7. There you go. It shows up now. If I get rid of one of these values, I think this turns into like 0 or something. So there's a way to handle it. Essentially, this is just checking if BMI is not a number. It's weird. Well, let's give it a message. So let's say like if they're overweight, then it'll show something. So if if BMI is greater than, so let's open this up here. Zoom out a little. Make this smaller. I guess I can't. Okay, so BMI is less than 18.5. Or actually, I don't even need to like work this logic out. I did it already here. So if it's less than 18.5, let's give a p tag saying you're under, or let's just say underweight. We'll have like a message saying like you're underweight or whatever. Now to do else, we could do like colon else, or sorry, else if BMI is greater than or equal to 18.5 and BMI is less than 25, then they're in the healthy range, right? Yeah. Healthy. Else. I'm not going to write this all out. Or it should be else if. So else if, this parentheses, if it's between 25 and 30, you're overweight. Yes. Now, anything besides that, so if it doesn't hit any of these, that means you are obese. So let's write that out. Obese. We want to do /if to end the if statement. Let's also have another if statement saying if it's not a number. So let's do like if BMI. So if BMI, let's see if that works. So essentially what I'm doing here is if BMI exists, let's change that as well. I think this is better. If BMI is some sort of truthy value, which just means like if it's true, if it exists, if it's a number, then we'll render out, or we'll continue this logic. If it's a number or whatever, then we'll render this out. So I'm going to do 161, 5'7". You can see that I am in the overweight category. You can see if I lower it, let's get rid of this rounding. 157. You can see as I lower it, oh, that's higher. Oh yeah, I want to make it higher. You got to see that. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. That this value, or like this value, will conditionally render based on the value of BMI. So I'm severely underweight. I'm obese, just like that. So that's all dynamic rendering, just like that. There is a ton of other stuff that this library has to offer. This is just one of many ways to use Svelte. It is a great library. Highly recommend looking into it. This website is amazing. You click this tutorial and you'll go over some of the stuff we kind of did. It's interactive. It'll tell you like what to do. on how to like learn everything. It has like a proper tutorial on how to like use all the concepts we just learned. So I would definitely do it if you're curious about learning more about Svelte. Um, Again, it's a great framework because it's very simple. I am really losing my voice. Hold on. I haven't talked this much in a while. Yeah, I mean, as a person who's like done React a lot, it's definitely something I would recommend. Just because it's the more you learn it, the more you'll thank yourself for not learning React and learning this instead. But you know what? You guys can be the judge of that yourself. Just I love this tool. I definitely want to learn more about it, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you guys for sticking around. I'm gonna stop recording.